The meeting. The forest was silent, but not the silence of peace. It was the silence before danger, the silence of hidden eyes watching. The human walked slowly through the tall trees, his breathing steady, his hand resting near his side where his weapon hung. The air was heavy, filled with the smell of wet soil and strange flowers that glowed faintly in the dark. He had traveled across many worlds, but this one felt different. It felt alive, as if the land itself was listening to his every step. He had not expected to meet anyone here. The planet was marked as empty, forgotten, unsafe for most explorers, but he had come anyway, drawn by a signal, a faint cry hidden in the static of space. Now, standing in the heart of the forest, he wondered if he had made a mistake. Then he saw her, a small figure, half hidden behind a glowing tree root. She was no taller than his chest, her skin pale with a soft shine, her eyes wide and bright like stars. She stared at him with fear, her small hands shaking as she held a piece of broken crystal, sharp enough to cut. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Neither moved, neither spoke. The air between them grew heavy. Finally, the girl spoke, her voice trembling. "Are you here to harm our mom as well?" she asked. "She's dying." The human froze. Her words struck him like a blade. Not because of the question, but because of the pain behind it. She had spoken of harm, of someone already hurting her mother, and now she stood before him, alone, afraid, and desperate. He slowly raised his hands, showing he carried no threat. "No," he said softly, his voice steady. "I am not here to hurt anyone." The girl did not lower the crystal, but her eyes filled with tears. "You are human," she whispered, as if the word itself was dangerous. "They told us humans bring fire, humans bring death." The human felt a chill run down his spine. This was not the first time he had heard such words. Across the stars, humans were seen in many ways. Explorers, fighters, survivors. But to some, humans were monsters, a warning whispered to children in the dark. And now this small alien child looked at him with the same fear. He took a slow step closer. "Who told you that?" he asked, his voice low. The girl shook her head, her eyes darting to the forest around them. "They are still here," she whispered. "The hunters, the ones who hurt her. They said more would come. They said you would finish what they started." The human's jaw tightened. Hunters. So this was not just a dying mother, not just a frightened child. There was danger in these woods. Danger that already knew about humans. And maybe, just maybe, danger that was waiting for him. Before he could speak again, the girl dropped the crystal, her small legs moving quickly as she grabbed his hand. "Come," she said, her voice breaking. "If you are not here to hurt her, then you must help. Please, before it is too late." The human hesitated. He did not know this planet. He did not know this family. But something in the girl's eyes, something in her trembling voice, told him this was not a trap. It was a cry for help, and it reached deep into him. He nodded once, firm and silent. "Take me to her," he said. The girl pulled him through the glowing trees, the roots twisting like serpents under their feet. The forest seemed to close around them, shadows shifting at the edges of sight. Every step echoed with suspense, every sound whispered of hidden watchers, and as the human followed the child into the unknown, a single thought burned in his mind. If her mother was dying, could he save her? And if the hunters were still here, watching, waiting, could he survive long enough to try? The forest gave no answer, only silence, only shadows, and the sense that the true story of this planet was only just beginning. The dying mother. The cave opened like the mouth of some ancient beast, breathing out a cold wind. The human stepped inside carefully, his hand brushing the rough stone wall. The small alien girl walked ahead, her thin figure glowing faintly under the blue light coming from the cave itself. Her steps were fast, almost running, but her shoulders trembled with fear. She whispered, "Hurry, she cannot wait." The deeper they went, the brighter the glow became. The walls of the cave were alive with strange veins of light, pulsing like blood in hidden arteries. It felt less like stone, and more like the inside of a great living creature. The human had traveled across many strange worlds, but never had he seen a place that felt so alive. Every sound of dripping water echoed like a heartbeat. Every shadow looked ready to move. Then he saw her. The alien mother lay on a bed of glowing moss, her body weak and trembling. Her skin, once silver and strong, had faded to a dull gray. Her breaths were short, shallow, each one a battle to survive. She looked less like a warrior and more like a fading flame. The girl ran to her side, falling to her knees, holding her mother's long hand. "Mom," she whispered, her voice breaking. The human approached slowly. His eyes scanned the scene, noting the strange plants that surrounded the mother. They bent toward her like loyal guardians, their leaves glowing faint green, but no matter how bright they shone, they were failing to heal her. It was as if the planet itself was trying to keep her alive and losing. The mother's eyes opened, weak but filled with deep color, violet like the heart of a storm. She looked at the human, and her lips parted. "You are not one of them," she whispered, her voice thin like smoke. Her gaze was heavy, searching, almost accusing. "You are not a hunter." The human lowered himself to one knee beside her. "I am numb." "Oh," he said quietly. "I came because I heard a call." The mother closed her eyes, a faint breath leaving her lips. The girl turned quickly to him, her eyes wide and wet. "They hurt her," she said, her voice shaking. "The hunters, they cut her, they poisoned her, they will come back." The human felt a chill ripple down his spine. So this was no accident, no illness of nature. Someone had done this, and if they returned, they would not stop until the mother was gone. The girl pointed to the scars along her mother's arms, long, deep, and glowing faintly, as if some poison still burned inside. Her little voice trembled. "They said more would come. They said humans are the same." She looked at him with both fear and desperate hope. "Are you here to finish her?" The human's jaw tightened. He shook his head slowly, firmly. "No," he said, his voice steady as steel. "I am not here to harm her." Silence filled the cave, broken only by the mother's weak breathing. The girl stared at him for a long moment, her lips pressed tight. Finally, she let out a soft sob and dropped her crystal shard. Then help her," she begged. "Please." The human opened his pack, pulling out a small med kit. It was simple Earth technology, nothing extraordinary, but here, in this place, it looked like a miracle. He carefully scanned the mother's body, reading the failing rhythms of her life. Her strength was fading, but she was not gone yet. There was a chance, if he moved quickly. As he worked, the glowing plants seemed to bend closer, as if watching. The air grew heavy, the cave almost holding its breath. It was not only the girl and her mother who waited for his choice, it was the planet itself. Would the human heal, or would he harm? Then, from outside, came a sound, a sharp crack. A stone shifted under heavy weight. The girl's head shot up, her eyes wide with terror. "They are here, Jisan," he whispered, her voice no louder than the wind. "The hunters are back." The human froze for one heartbeat, then his hand moved to his weapon, his eyes narrowed, scanning the cave entrance. The shadows outside were moving, silent but certain. Whoever they were, they had already harmed this family once, and now, as the air grew colder, the human knew they had returned to finish the job. Secrets of the planet. The night outside the cave was alive with whispers. The human sat near the entrance, his weapon ready, his eyes sharp. Behind him, the little alien girl held her mother's hand, whispering softly in her own language. The mother's breath was weak, but steady for now, kept alive by the human's medicine. Yet danger was not gone. It was waiting, just beyond the shadows. The forest moved as if it had a will of its own. Leaves rustled, though no wind touched them. Roots shifted slowly as if listening. The human had been to many planets, but never one that felt this alive. It was as though the land itself wanted to speak, but could only whisper in silence. The girl crawled closer to him, her eyes wide and serious. "You do not understand this place," she said, her voice shaking. "This is not just a forest, it is our protector, it is our prison, it is our home." The human frowned, turning his gaze back to the glowing trees outside. "What do you mean?" he asked. The girl's small hands clenched. "Long ago, my people lived free. We walked the skies. We crossed stars like rivers," she said. "But then came the hunters. They wanted the secret of this planet. They wanted its heart." Her voice cracked, but she continued. "They could not take it, so they tried to destroy it. They tried to kill my mother, the last guardian." The human's chest tightened. Guardian. That word carried weight. The mother was not just a parent. She was a protector of something greater, something worth killing for. "What is she guarding?" he asked carefully. The girl shook her head, her eyes filling with fear. "I cannot tell you," she whispered. "The hunters said humans would come for it too." "Ooh, they said humans are the most dangerous of all." The words cut deep. The human had heard them before, on other worlds, from other mouths. Humans were feared, not because they were the strongest, but because they were relentless. They adapted, they survived, they never gave up, and in the eyes of many, that made them monsters. But here, In this cave, staring at the trembling child, he wondered if maybe humans could be something else. Not destroyers, but protectors. Not monsters, but allies. He looked back at the mother, her body glowing faintly under the alien light. She seemed less like a person and more like a piece of the planet itself. The cave walls pulsed gently, the moss around her shifting in rhythm with her breath. It was as if the planet lived through her, and she through it. If she died, maybe the planet would fade too. A distant sound broke the silence, the cry of some creature, sharp and low, echoing through the forest. The girl grabbed his arm tightly, her voice trembling. "They are hunting again," she whispered. "They can smell weakness. They can smell us." The human stood, his body tense. Every instinct told him danger was near, but another thought burned inside him. He could leave, he could escape before the hunters came, or he could stay and face whatever secret they were willing to kill for. The girl's eyes searched his face, desperate and afraid. "Will you protect us?" she asked, her voice small. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he lowered his weapon, resting it against his leg, and nodded once, firm. "I will try," he said. Humans do not run from danger. The forest outside went silent again. The trees stood still, the roots quiet, the air heavy. It was as if the planet itself had heard his words, as if it too was waiting to see if they were true. And in that heavy silence, the human understood one thing. This was no simple rescue. This was a war for the heart of a living world, and he, a stranger, a human, had just stepped into it. The silent enemy. The cave was quiet. Too quiet. The human stood near the entrance, his weapon in hand, his eyes searching the dark forest. The glowing trees outside flickered softly, casting long shadows that moved like ghosts. The air was heavy, carrying a strange smell, sharp and metallic. It was the smell of danger. Behind him, the girl sat close to her mother, whispering softly. Her small voice was calm, but her hands trembled as she held her mother's fading arm. The human listened, his ears sharp, his body tense. He had survived battles before. He knew the feeling of being hunted, and now, that same feeling pressed against his skin. Something was out there, something that did not want to be seen. The human stepped forward, careful and slow. Every broken leaf, every crunch of soil echoed like thunder in the silence. Then, he heard it. A faint movement, quick and sharp, like claws brushing against stone. His eyes darted to the trees, but saw nothing. Only the glowing vines swaying gently. The forest looked empty, but he knew it was not. He crouched, touching the soil with his fingers. The ground was warm, too warm, as if something heavy had walked there moments before. He followed the marks. Faint trails pressed into the soft moss. They were not human, not animal. They were too long, too sharp, too precise. The girl's voice broke the silence. "They are here," she whispered, her words like ice. "They do not show themselves until it is too late." The human turned back to her, his eyes narrowing. "Then tell me," he said, "what are they?" Her lips trembled, her voice low and fearful. "They are the hunters," she said. "They wear shadows. They move without sound. They kill without mercy." Her gaze dropped to her mother, her tears falling. "They want the secret. They want her gone." The human's grip tightened on his weapon. He had fought many enemies before, but one like this, silent killers, unseen in the forest, predators who hunted guardians and children. His jaw set hard. If they came for the girl and her mother, they would meet something new. They would meet a human. A sudden crack echoed through the forest. A branch snapped, not by accident, but with purpose. The human swung his weapon up, eyes scanning. The trees shifted again, shadows sliding where no light should bend. He aimed, but the enemy slipped back into the dark, unseen. His heart pounded, but his mind stayed sharp. He knew fear was their weapon, silence their shield. If he let them control the night, they would win. He had to break their game. He had to show them that humans were not easy prey. He stepped forward into the glow, raising his voice. "I know you are out there," he called, his tone strong. "You can hide, but you cannot break me." The sound echoed through the forest, bouncing between the trees. For a moment, everything went still. Then, a hiss came, long and cold. The girl gasped, clutching her mother tighter. The human raised his weapon higher, his muscles ready. The forest shifted again, and this time he saw them. Two shapes, tall and thin, moving like liquid shadows between the glowing roots. Their eyes burned faint red, like embers hidden in smoke. They did not rush. They did not shout. They simply watched, their bodies melting into the darkness again. The human knew then, this was only a test. They were circling, waiting for weakness, waiting for the moment to strike. He stepped back slowly into the cave, standing tall between the entrance and the family, his voice low. He whispered to himself, "Let them come." And though fear pressed against his chest, his eyes burned with fire. The hunters thought silence was their power, but tonight they would learn the truth. Humans had faced silence before, and humans had always endured. The promise. The night stretched long, the forest breathing with quiet danger. The human stood at the mouth of the cave, weapon in his hand, his shadow tall against the glowing moss. Behind him, the little alien girl sat close to her mother, whispering prayers in a language he could not understand. The mother's breaths came slow, each one weaker than the last. The cave felt heavy, as if the whole planet was holding its breath. The hunters had shown themselves once, red eyes burning in the dark, but they had not attacked. They circled, they watched, they waited. The human knew this tactic well. Predators tested their prey before striking. They wanted him to be afraid, to make mistakes, but he would not give them that victory. The girl's small voice broke the silence, her eyes wide and wet, her hands trembling as she held her mother's fading arm. "Will you leave us?" she asked, her voice no louder than a breath. "They all leave when the hunters come." The human turned, his face calm though his heart was heavy. He knelt before her, lowering his weapon to the ground. "No," he said firmly, his voice carrying strength. "I will not leave you. Not now. Not ever." The girl stared at him, her lips trembling. "But you are human," she whispered, almost like a curse. "They said humans only think of themselves. They said humans are cruel." Her eyes searched his, desperate for truth. "Why would you stay?" The human's gaze did not move. "Because your mother is still alive," he said, "and because you are not alone anymore." The words came steady, not forced, not empty. He had seen too much death, too many broken promises across the stars. This time, he would not be another shadow that vanished. The girl let out a soft sob, her body shaking. She clutched his hand, small fingers gripping hard. "Promise me," she whispered. "Promise you will not leave her. Promise you will not leave me." The human placed his hand over hers, strong and steady. "I promise," he said. "Even if the hunters come, even if I fall, I will not abandon you." The girl closed her eyes, holding those words as if they were a shield. For the first time, a spark of trust lit in her gaze. It was fragile, small as a candle in the storm, but it was there. She leaned against her mother, whispering softly, "He promised, Mom. He promised." The human rose again, picking up his weapon. He felt the weight of his words settle in his chest. A promise was not just sound, not just air. For humans, a promise was iron, unbreakable, and he would hold it, no matter the cost. Outside, the forest shifted again, the hunters testing the night. Shadows slid across the glowing trees, eyes flashing briefly, but the human did not waver. He stood tall, a wall between danger and the dying mother. The hunters could circle, they could wait, but he would be there when they came. The cave seemed to respond, the moss glowing brighter, the air warmer. The girl noticed too, her eyes widening. "It listens to you," she whispered. "The cave, the forest, the planet itself, it listens." The human said nothing, but deep inside, he felt it as well. This place was alive, and it had heard his promise. It was watching, waiting, and perhaps it believed in him too. Far in the distance, a howl cut through the night, sharp and cruel. The hunters were calling, warning, or perhaps laughing. The human tightened his grip on his weapon. The girl's trust, the mother's fragile life, the planet's hidden secret, all now rested on him, and though the weight was heavy, he did not bend. He whispered to himself, voice steady, "Humans do not run." Then louder, to the shadows, to the hunters, to the night itself, "You will not take them, not while I breathe." And in that moment, the silence broke. The forest grew still. The hunters paused. The planet listened. A promise had been made, and humans, unlike shadows, unlike whispers, unlike fear, always kept their word. The attack. The night did not wait forever. The forest that had been holding its breath finally moved. The shadows outside the cave shifted like smoke in the wind. The hunters were no longer watching, no longer circling. They were coming. The human felt it before he heard it. The ground trembled with a soft vibration, a rhythm of many feet moving together. He raised his weapon, his jaw tight, his eyes sharp. Behind him, the little alien girl held her mother's hand tighter, whispering a prayer. The glow of the moss flickered, as if the planet itself was afraid. Then the first sound broke the silence, a hiss, long and low, slithering through the trees. The human stepped forward, his shadow stretching across the cave floor. Red eyes appeared in the darkness. One pair, then two, then more. The hunters had come, their bodies tall and thin, their skin blending with the night. They did not roar, they did not shout. They moved like liquid, silent, deadly, certain. The human's heart pounded, but his hands stayed steady. He had promised the girl he would not leave, and humans did not break promises. The first hunter leapt from the shadows, claws extended, eyes burning. The human fired, the sound crashing through the forest like thunder. The shot struck. The creature screamed, its body twisting before falling into the moss. But even as it fell, two more appeared, sliding from the trees. Their movements fast, too fast. The human swung his weapon again, blocking a claw, sparks flying as steel met shadow. He kicked hard, forcing the hunter back, but another claw scraped across his shoulder, tearing the fabric of his suit. Pain burned, but he did not fall. He pushed forward, every strike, every step driven by his promise. He would not let them pass. The girl cried out, her small hands covering her ears, but her eyes stayed on him, wide with shock and fear. She had never seen anyone fight the hunters like this. She had never seen anyone stand and not run. The cave itself seemed to shake with the battle, the glowing plants bending as if in pain. The hunters hissed again, their voices cold and sharp. They spoke in a tongue the human did not know, but he understood the meaning. They wanted the mother dead. They wanted the guardian gone. He roared back, his own voice raw and human. "You will not have her," he shouted, his weapon flashing again. The sound of fire lit the cave. The smell of smoke and blood filled the air. One hunter fell, another stumbled, but still more came, sliding from the trees, endless as shadows. The human's breath grew heavy, sweat mixing with blood on his face, but his eyes burned bright, his body refusing to stop. For every strike against him, he gave two back. For every wound, he fought harder. The hunters had their silence, but he had his will, and will was stronger than fear. The girl crawled closer to her mother, whispering urgently, "Hold on, Mom. He is fighting for us. Hold on." The mother opened her eyes weakly, violet light flickering inside. She looked at the human through her pain, and a faint smile touched her lips. "You fight like one of us," she whispered, her voice soft but proud. The battle raged on, claws striking, fire flashing, the forest shaking, but still the human stood. His promise was his shield, his fury, his weapon. The hunters had come to kill, to finish what they started, but they had not counted on a human standing in their path. And as the night screamed with battle, a new truth echoed in the cave. Humans did not run. Humans did not surrender. Humans did not break. The hunters had found their prey, but what they met was something else, something stronger, something they could not silence. The truth revealed. The cave was filled with the smell of smoke and blood. The last echo of battle faded into silence. The human stood at the entrance, chest rising and falling, his body marked with cuts, but his eyes still sharp. Around him, the moss glowed faintly, as if the planet itself was breathing again. The hunters were gone, their shadows broken, their bodies scattered across the forest floor. Behind him, the girl clung to her mother, tears streaking her pale face. Her small voice trembled. "You did not run." The human turned to her, wiping blood from his brow. "No," he said firmly. "I told you I would not leave." The mother stirred weakly, her violet eyes opening. She gazed at the human, her lips trembling. "You fight like no other," she whispered, "but you do not know why they come." Her voice was faint, but heavy with meaning. The human stepped closer, kneeling beside her. "Then tell me," he said, his voice steady, "why do they want you dead?" For a long moment, the cave was silent. The girl looked at her mother, fear flashing in her eyes. "Do not tell him," she whispered. "He is human. He will take it too." Her voice was desperate, torn between hope and fear. But the mother shook her head slowly, her hand resting weakly on her daughter's arm. "No," the mother whispered. "He must know, for if he does not, we are already lost." She turned her eyes back to the human, violet light flickering faintly. "This world is not just stone and trees. It is alive," she said. "The forest, the rivers, the caves, all are part of one being, the heart of the planet." Her voice trembled, but her words carried weight. "I am its guardian, chosen to keep the balance, chosen to protect its secret." The human listened, his mind sharp, his breath steady. A living world, a guardian, a secret worth killing for. It was no longer just about survival, it was about power. The mother's hand clenched weakly. "The hunters are not only killers," she said. "They are thieves. They want the heart. They want its power, to bend it, to use it, to feed their endless hunger." Her eyes closed briefly, her body shaking. "If I die, the heart will weaken, the planet will fall, and they will take all that is left." The human felt a weight settle in his chest. This was no ordinary battle, no passing mission. The hunters were not after blood alone. They were after control of something greater, something alive, and the mother was the last barrier standing in their way. The girl looked at him, her eyes sharp with fear. "Now you know," she said, her voice shaking. "Will you leave us? Will you try to take it for yourself?" Her words cut deep, her trust fragile, but the human did not flinch. He met her gaze with calm fire. "I am not here for power," he said, his voice low but firm. "I am here because you asked for help, and because I gave you my word." The girl's lips trembled, her tears falling again. She looked at her mother, then back at him, and for the first time, she did not look away. The mother's eyes softened, a faint smile on her lips. "You are not like the others," she whispered. Perhaps humans are more than the hunters said." Her voice faded as her strength gave out, but her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The human stood slowly, gripping his weapon. The truth was clear now. The hunters would not stop, not until the mother was dead, not until the planet's heart was theirs. And if that happened, the girl would be alone, the world would be broken, and the secret would be lost. He looked out into the forest, where silence had returned. The shadows were gone, but he knew they would come again. They would return in greater numbers, stronger, more desperate. And when they did, he would be waiting. He whispered to himself, his words sank steady as stone. If they want the heart of this world, they will have to break a human first. The human choice. The night grew colder, the cave breathing with silence. The hunters were gone for now, but their absence felt heavy. The human stood at the edge of the glowing moss, staring out at the dark forest. Every tree seemed to watch him, every shadow waiting for his next move. Behind him, the girl whispered to her mother, her small voice soft but filled with worry. The human's body ached with wounds, his shoulder burned, his chest throbbed with every breath. He could leave, he thought. He could slip away into the night, find his ship, and vanish into the stars. No one would know, no one would judge. He had done his part, he had kept them alive for now, but the hunters would return, stronger, faster, endless as shadows. He looked at the girl, her hands gripping her mother's fading arm. Her eyes met his, wide and desperate. She did not speak, but he could hear the question inside her. "Will you stay, or will you leave us like all the others?" The human closed his eyes, his mind heavy with memories. He thought of Earth, of battles long past, of the people he had seen fall. He thought of promises broken by fear, of families torn apart by silence. Humans had suffered, humans had bled, but humans had also endured, and he had learned one truth in all those years: running never saved anyone. The mother stirred weakly, her violet eyes opening. Her voice was faint, broken by pain, but her words carried weight. "You have no bond to us, no reason to fight for us," she whispered. "You could leave, and no one would blame you." Her lips trembled, her breath shallow. "But if you stay, you will carry more than our lives. You will carry the fate of this world." The words struck him deep. He was only one man, one human, far from home. But in that moment, the choice was clear. If he left, the hunters would win, the heart of the planet would fall, the girl would be alone. If he stayed, he might die, but he might also change everything. He opened his eyes, sharp and steady. He stepped closer to the mother and the girl, kneeling so his gaze met theirs. "I came here because I heard a call," he said, his voice firm. "I did not understand it then, but I understand it now." He placed a hand on the ground, feeling the faint pulse of the living cave. "This planet does not need another hunter. It needs someone who will fight for it." The girl's lips trembled, her tears shining in the glow. "You mean you will stay?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The human nodded, slow and steady. "I will stay," he said. "I will fight for you, for her, for this world." The cave seemed to breathe at those words. The moss glowed brighter, the walls pulsed faintly, as if the planet itself had heard and approved. The girl let out a sob of relief, clutching her mother tighter. The mother's lips curved in the faintest smile, her voice soft as air. "Then perhaps there is hope," she whispered. Before her eyes closed again, the human rose, gripping his weapon tighter. His wounds forgotten, his choice was made, his path set. He would not run, he would not abandon them. He would fight, even if it meant his life. He turned toward the forest, his eyes sharp, his voice low but steady. "Come back, hunters," he whispered. "I am ready now." And though the night was still, he felt the shadows stir. They had heard his choice, and they would answer soon. The last battle. The forest did not wait long. Shadows moved between the glowing trees, darker than night, heavier than smoke. The human stood at the cave entrance, his weapon in hand, his eyes fixed on the shifting dark. Behind him, the little girl pressed close to her mother, whispering softly, her voice a fragile thread. The air grew colder, the silence sharp. Then came the sound, a low hiss rising from the trees, answered by another, and another. Dozens of red eyes opened in the dark, flickering like embers in a dying fire. The hunters had returned, greater in number, faster, hungrier. They were not testing anymore. They were not circling. This time, they had come to end it. The human tightened his grip, his chest heavy but steady. He had chosen to stay, chosen to fight. Now the promise he gave was no longer words. It was a shield. The hunters rushed forward, claws scraping, their movements quick and silent. The ground trembled under the weight of their charge. The first leapt high, its claws flashing. The human fired, the shot blazing through the dark, striking true. The creature fell, but another leapt behind it, and another followed. The cave shook with the sound of battle, fire against shadow, steel against claw. The girl gasped, her hands covering her mouth, yet her eyes stayed on him. The human moved with fierce precision, every strike fueled by his promise. Pain cut across his arms and legs, claws tearing fabric and skin, but he stood, he struck, he endured. For every wound, he gave back twice the fury. The hunters hissed in anger, their perfect silence broken. One slipped past him, sliding low toward the girl. She screamed, clutching her mother's hand, but the human turned, faster than the shadow expected. He hurled his weapon like a spear, the shot exploding at impact. The hunter fell, its body smoking, the girl gasping in shock, the forest itself seemed to rage, the glowing plants bending, the ground trembling. It was as if the living world felt the struggle, as if it fought with him. Every pulse of the moss grew brighter, lighting the cave like a beating heart. The hunters hissed louder, striking harder, desperate to break through. But the human stood tall, his shadow long and unbroken. The girl crawled forward, her small voice sharp with courage. "Take this," she cried, offering him a glowing shard of crystal. "It is part of the heart. It will help you." The human caught it, feeling its heat burn into his palm. Energy surged through him, bright and fierce. His eyes burned with new fire, his strikes faster, stronger. The hunters staggered, their shadows tearing under the light. They hissed in rage, their silence shattered. But the human roared back, his voice shaking the cave. "You will not take them," he thundered. "You will not take this world." The battle stretched long, minutes turning into an endless storm. But the hunters began to falter, their numbers thinning, their bodies breaking. The girl's tears turned to awe, her fear melting into belief. She saw not a monster, not a destroyer, but a protector, a human standing where no one else would. At last, the final hunter fell, its shadow burning away into smoke. The forest grew still, the air heavy, the silence deep. The human stood trembling, his body torn, his breath ragged, but he did not fall. Behind him, the girl whispered through her tears, "You kept your promise." The human turned, his eyes soft though his body shook. "I told you," he said, his voice rough but steady. "Humans do not run." The cave glowed brighter than before, the moss pulsing with warmth. The mother's eyes opened faintly, her lips trembling into a weak smile. "You fought the darkness," she whispered. "You fought as one of us." Her voice carried hope, fragile but real, and for two, first time, the forest did not feel afraid. The human lowered his weapon, his promise fulfilled for now, but he knew this was not the end. The hunters would return, others would come. Yet tonight, one truth had been carved into the silence. Humans were not prey, humans were not shadows, humans endured, humans are special. The cave glowed like a beating heart, the moss shining brighter than ever. The battle was over, but the echoes of it still clung to the air. The human stood tall though his body shook with pain, his cuts raw, his breath heavy. Around him, the forest was silent, watching, waiting, listening. The hunters were gone, their shadows broken, their silence shattered. Behind him, the little girl knelt beside her mother, her small hand still clutching the fading arm, her eyes lifted to the human, filled not with fear, but with awe. "You saved us," she whispered, her voice trembling like soft rain. "You stayed, you kept your promise." The human nodded slowly, wiping blood from his face. "I told you I would not leave," he said, his voice steady though his body ached. "Humans do not break their word." The mother stirred weakly, her violet eyes opening with faint light. She looked at him, her lips trembling with effort. "You fought not for power, not for gain, but for us," she whispered. "In all the years of my guardianship, I have never seen such a thing." Her breath was shallow, but her words carried the weight of truth. The human knelt beside her, opening his pack once more. He pulled out the last of his medicine, simple earth technology, nothing special. Yet when he touched it to her wounds, the glow of the moss joined with it. The human and the planet worked together, healing her with both science and life. Slowly, her breaths grew deeper, her trembling eased, her strength returned. The girl gasped, her tears turning into a bright smile. "She is healing," she cried. "You saved her, truly saved her." Her small hands gripped his tightly, as if he were more than a stranger, as if he were family. The mother's eyes softened, her voice steady, "Ill faint but stronger than before. You are human, yet you carry the heart of a guardian," she said. "Perhaps your kind is not what the hunters claimed." Her gaze lingered on him, a light of trust breaking through pain. "Perhaps humans are something else, something new." The forest pulsed around them, the trees glowing faintly, the ground warm with life. It was as if the planet itself was agreeing, as if it too recognized his choice. The human rose, his weapon lowered, his eyes sharp with resolve. He knew the hunters would not stop. They would return, stronger and fiercer. But he also knew something else, something truer. Humans did not fight only for themselves. They fought for family, for promises, for the weak who could not stand. They fought because survival was not enough, because hope mattered. And tonight, in this alien cave, on this living world, that truth had been proven. The girl stepped forward, standing beside him, her small figure glowing in the moss light. "You are not like them," she said softly. "You are not a monster." Her voice trembled, but her eyes burned with belief. "You are different." The human looked at her, his face calm, his voice low but certain. "No," he said, "I am only human." Silence filled the cave, not heavy with fear this time, but with meaning. The mother closed her eyes, resting at last without pain, her breathing steady. The girl leaned against her, still holding the human's hand. The forest outside shifted, the shadows fading. The hunters gone for now. The world had survived another night. The human stepped back toward the cave entrance, his gaze on the endless forest. The fight was not finished, but the path was clear. He was only one man, one human, far from his home. But he carried something no hunter, no shadow, no silence could match. The will to endure, the promise to protect, the heart to fight for more than himself. And as the first light of dawn touched the glowing trees, the truth of this night remained. Humans were not monsters, humans were not prey, humans were something else entirely. Something fierce, something unbroken, something special.